Syarif bisa nggak saya?
Tidak bisa. Biasalah.
Now I can hear you. This meeting is being recorded. Okay.
Is it okay, Pak Paul?
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
All right.
So I hope my connection is not so strong, I see. Hopefully it will be better. Let me open the door maybe. You can still hear me?
Yes, Pak Paul, clearly.
Oh, okay, good. So I can see my Wi-Fi connection is not very strong at the
Oh,
moment. Hopefully
okay.
it will be better.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Sometimes it's very crowded this hour, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Everybody is on the Wi-Fi.
I see.
Anyway, okay.
Bu Budhi, the organizer will start at what time?
To shut, Dr. Fajar.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's better.
So shall we start now?
Fine
Yeah.
with me. Yeah.
MC-nya siapa? Fajar?
I have no idea, Bu.
Wahid, Bu Ai.
Oh, oke. Okay.
Wahid, bisa dimulai mungkin acaranya, Wahid?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings to all of us. Firstly, let's say thanks to our God Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the Lord of the universe who has been given us His blessing and mercy, so that we can gather in this Zoom meeting without something wrong happen. Amin. Secondly, my peace be upon our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Allahumma sholli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Honorable Deputy Dean Faculty of Engineering, Mrs. Professor Vera Surtia Bhartiar, PhD. Honorable our Speaker, Mr. Dr. Paul Berger. Honorable our Moderator, Mrs. Budhi Primasari, Master Science. Honorable all lecturer and staff of Environmental Engineering Department and also the audience and seminar participants. Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, Huwaid Azizahan, as the master ceremony will guide this seminar titled Carbon Threat as a Driving Factor for Land Restoration Case Studies in West Sumatra. The first agenda is opening by MC, so let's start this agenda by saying Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Before entering the second agenda, there are several rules that must be obeyed in these seminars. There are, first, naming rules for the participant, institution underscore full name. Example, Unand underscore Ayu. For the committee, committee underscore full name. Example, Panitia underscore Ayu. Second rules, participants are expected to use the virtual background that has been provided. Third rules, participants can submit questions to the presenter via the chat room by using the following format: ask underscore institution, name underscore question. Fourth rules, participants are required to turn on the camera during the photo group session. Fifth rules, participants are required to turn off the microphone or mute during the meeting unless requested by moderator. Sixth, e-certificate will be created and sent to the participant who filled in the attendance. The second agenda is greetings from our Deputy Dean Faculty of Engineering, Mrs. Professor Vera Surtia Bhartiar. Time is yours.
Thank you, Wahid. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Who I respect the head of department, Bapak Rizky Aziz, PhD, the secretary of the department, Bapak Ridwan MT, coordinator of undergraduate and postgraduate program and lecturer of environmental engineering, Andalas University. To Honorable our keynote speaker today, Dr. Paul Vogel. Welcome to our campus, Mr. Paul. Even if only virtually. Thank you very much for your time in this event. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, which are very useful for all participants. To Honorable Ibu Budhi Primasari as a moderator in this event, then our student and all of participants. First of all, let's pray and thanks into our God, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has been giving us some mercies and blessing, so we can attend and gather in this Zoom meeting room in good condition and blessing. So we can attend. I think in good condition and happy situation. Secondly, my peace and salutation always be given to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who has guided us from the darkness to brightness. This international webinar is a part of academic program every year at Engineering Faculty, Andalas University. As an undergraduate program that has excellent accreditation from the National Accreditation Body, BAN-PT, and has international accreditation certificate from ABET and IAB, Environmental Engineering Department, always expand its international network. One of them is by holding international webinar. Talking about carbon trading, I hope the audience, especially our students and all of participants, can find out more about what the carbon trading is, how the carbon trading system is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of carbon trading, and so on. I hope this event can increase knowledge about carbon trading. I also hope that students can play an active role in this discussion session. Finally, that is all I speak that I can deliver. Ideally, what I have said is againful for us. I'm so sorry if I have a mistake. Thank you for your attention. Enjoy the seminar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mrs. Professor Vera Surtia Bahtiar, PhD, for the greeting. The third agenda is to take photos together. Please open your camera and the operator will guide us to take photos together.
Okay. The first slide. Oke, 1, 2, 3. The next slide. 1, 2, 3. Next slide. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you for your attention. The next agenda is the main agenda which are waiting for explanation from the speaker, Mr. Dr. Paul Berger. In this agenda, we will moderate by Mrs. Budhi Primasari, Master Science. Before we start, let me read her curriculum vitae. Mrs. Budhi Primasari is a senior lecturer from Department of Environmental Engineering, Universitas Andalas. Mrs. Budhi is a graduate from Bachelor of Engineering, Department of Chemical Engineering, Institut Teknologi Bandung, and Master of Science in Environmental Technology, University of Manchester. There are several researches conducted by Mrs. Budhi, including first, wastewater treatment, include bioplastic or PHB production from wastewater, and then microbial fuel cell, novel material for metal remover, and then microplastic pollution in water environment. That's all about Mrs. Budhi. Now the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, White. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable speaker of today's webinars, Dr. Paul Berger, Prof. Farah Bhatia, Deputy Dean of Academic Affairs, Dr. Rizky Aziz, Head of the Department of Environmental Engineering, all respectable lecturers, students, and all participants. I'm Budhi Primasari from Department of Environmental Engineering, Universitas Andalas, the moderator of today's webinar. I'm very pleased to see you here and welcome all of you to this webinar. Today's webinar is about carbon trade as a driving factors for land restoration, case study West Sumatra. Okay, it's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Paul Berger. Dr. Paul Berger is founder of the CO2 Operate DFI, Gula Gula Food Forest Program, and has worked since 2008. He worked for the World Agroforestry Center in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands from 1995 to 2001. 2002 to 2013, he was the academic research staff in the Universiteit Utrecht, Netherlands. 2014 to 2016, he was the project leader of the indirect effect of oil palm production in Riau, Sumatra, which is the cooperation program of Wageningen University. And before the presentation begins, let me inform how the presentation will be going on. First, Dr. Paul will be invited to present the material for about 40 minutes. And after that, there will be a question and answer session and followed by conclusion. And participant can write down the question in the chat column. The committee will take notes of your question. Okay, now allow me to welcome our speaker, Dr. Paul Burgers, to deliver his presentation. Would you please welcome Dr. Paul Burgers?
Yes. Oh, you mean me? Sorry. Yes, thank you very much, all of you, to invite me. And let me first of all congratulate Techniek Lingkungan Unand with their 25th anniversary, which I understand is actually today. So I'm very happy that I can be part of the seminar today, and I hope I can finish in 40 minutes. Let's see. Thank you. So, yes. Okay. Okay. So everybody heard my few notes. And yeah, if you are ready, I think Unand is supposed to share the presentation, or yes, it's coming. Oh, so shall I start? Just like that? Okay. So yeah, thank you. So we are working in West Sumatra, and in carbon trade and carbon market, we set up projects in West Sumatra. And yeah, let's start with the next slide, please. So we go through the presentation as follows. I'll give you some of the global context in which the carbon trade is operating, then what we are doing and where we work, how we implement carbon trade projects by putting farmers first. And at the end, we will have some conclusions of our experiences. Next, please. So to start with, whatever we are looking at this moment in climate change policies and work activities in the world, it's all based on the Paris Climate Agreement, which was done in 2015. So it's already 6 years ago. It was then by all countries decided that we have to reduce carbon emissions to make sure that our global temperature stays below 2 degrees Celsius. And we are aiming for a net zero emissions by 2050. For that, the world has to align the financial means and make sure that all kinds of financial flows are going in the right direction so that we can do something about climate change. Yeah, next, please. So what is the issue here? We have to remove 10 to 50 tons of gigatons of carbon dioxide per year from the atmosphere by the year of 2050. And if we want to achieve a carbon neutral world by 2050, we have to come up with a lot of strategies. So we have to mitigate fossil fuel use. As you can see, if we continue, then the temperature will rise up to 4, even above 4 degrees Celsius, which will destroy a lot of ecosystems, biodiversity. It will be hard for farmers to grow crops. So we really have to make sure that now is the time to do something. And if you look at the short term, it's not about changing to renewable energy, because if you know, renewable energy cannot take out carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. It only prevents adding more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So there's one important aspect which is really needed to take out this carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which are natural climate solutions, like forest projects, planting trees, growing trees. It's very important because trees are a natural way to take out carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So we really cannot do without reforestation in the world. If you look at the data, by 2030, the natural climate solutions can be up to 37% of the solution. So in the short run, it's really important that we speed up the work in reforestation and natural climate solution. We restore ecosystems, because otherwise we will never achieve climate neutral and climate neutral world by 2050. So we will still need it up until 2050, but in the short run, it will be a very important component. Next, please. So one of these financial instruments to achieve reforestation or natural climate solutions in the short run is the use of carbon markets and the carbon offsets. So we at Cooperate are a bit a unique cooperation, because we are doing both. We are implementing projects for carbon projects, ecosystem restoration, but we are also a broker for selling the carbon offsets. Usually there is a deal between a carbon offsetter and a project, which are not usually not one and the same organization, but in our case we are doing both. So we are trying to find clients here in Europe who want to do carbon offsetting or have to reduce their emissions, and we help them in setting up a project. And in many cases we also look at the company, what is their what is their business. Like recently we have an Indonesian spice company called Gotan, based in the Netherlands. They are selling a lot of Indonesian spices and products in the Netherlands. So with them we are going to set up a project on the melinjo nuts, and because they want to have the krupuk, the emping krupuk, which of course very famous in West Sumatra. So we are in that sense also helping them in securing their supplies in the future, while also the trees can sequester carbon. So we are getting Plan Vivo certified, which is an official accreditation for carbon credits. We hope to be finished by the end of this year, if all goes well, but in this COVID situation, you never know. It's been delayed already for 6 months because of COVID issues, but I think we're almost there. And once that is done, we can start selling official carbon credits. Next, please. So yeah, carbon credits. What are carbon credits? Maybe you heard about it. Carbon credits, there are two different kinds of carbon credits: the certified emission reduction, and you have voluntary emission reduction, which are called VERs and CERs. So CERs are really the carbon credits which are traded among countries at a high level, because each country has a target for reducing their carbon emissions. And for that reduction, especially the energy intensive industries, like maybe the cement Padang is part of it. We have the petrochemical industries. We have energy companies like PLN. They all have to contribute officially to reducing their emissions. And maybe it's good now to show this video on the CDM mechanism, so you can see how it works at national levels. Can we start the video or? Yeah. No, this one, the one on the right should be first. Maybe you can just click the link, it would also be possible. Yeah, that's the one.
This is our world. According to leading scientists, greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons are contributing to climate change. In the year 1997, representatives from more than 160 countries met in Kyoto, Japan, and committed to reduce their emissions of greenhouse gases. This is the Kyoto Protocol. And as of today, 184 countries have ratified it. For the developed world, there are many ways to achieve their targets of reduced emissions. One way is to partially pay for installations of technologies that lower greenhouse gas emissions in the developing countries. This is called the Clean Development Mechanism. For countries like India, China, and Brazil, it helps offset the costs of technologies and measures that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Consider a coal-based power company in a developing country as an example. Let's assume that for every kilowatt hour of power generated, 1 ton of carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. Now consider that the power company sets up a wind farm. If the next kilowatt hour of power is generated from wind instead of coal, carbon dioxide emissions are cut by 1 ton. Each ton of carbon dioxide reduced is worth 1 carbon credit. The power company can sell this carbon credit to a company in a country with emission targets who is releasing, say, 2 tons of carbon dioxide instead of 1. Without the sale of the carbon credit, it may not have been possible for the power company in India to finance the wind farm. There are many other projects that are eligible for carbon credits. These projects too can sell the credits in advance and use the funds towards implementing the project. Or a purchaser could pay a fixed price for the carbon credits as they are generated each year, and this contract may make the project more attractive to debt and equity providers. If you're interested in utilizing carbon finance for a project, or partnering to finance a carbon credit project, or investing in carbon credits, reach out to Carbon Credit Capital.
Okay, so you can see that this is really part of the Kyoto Protocol, and yeah, national governments have set targets. Also, Indonesia has set, I think, 25% reduction officially, and with the help of foreign countries, up to 40% of emission reductions. And this is mainly
good morning,
based.
everyone. Welcome to the Municipal Climate Change Action Center's Carbon Credits 101 webinar.
Yeah. we're back. Yeah. So that's a target for Indonesia also. But next to the this official market, which is called the compliance market, maybe you heard about it. There's also a growing voluntary market. A voluntary market doesn't mean it's just voluntary, but it's those companies who are not part of the Kyoto Protocol. Increasingly in Europe and the US, you find more and more companies, small, medium enterprises, larger companies. They want to do something about climate change, but they cannot, or they are not part of this certified emission reduction, but they just want to do it on an individual basis. And they have very good reasons to do so. And that will be explained in the next video, which can start now, which gives you a very clear idea of why companies are looking for carbon offsetting.
We've established that carbon management can be mandatory. But if an organisation is not legally required by government to reduce its emissions, is there a business case for voluntary carbon management? Aside from compliance reasons, there are many other important drivers as to why an organisation should engage in carbon management. These include rising energy costs, brand reputation, energy security risk, anticipated government regulations, and investor, staff, and customer expectations. In response to these drivers, there is a growing trend in organisations measuring, reporting, and reducing their emissions voluntarily because there are multiple benefits above and beyond compliance. These include improved organisational efficiency and cost savings, competitive advantage such as through new low-carbon products and services, enhanced corporate social responsibility and brand, stronger stakeholder relationships, risk management and better governance, and leveraging climate finance. There exists a myth that carbon management is economically damaging to companies. Most carbon abatement projects do require financial investment, but just like buying shares or a house, investing money in these projects is often financially beneficial. Importantly, many companies around the world and in all sectors of the economy are reducing emissions while achieving significant savings and improved efficiency through areas such as energy and waste reduction and lower fuel use. Take the Dow Chemical Company, for instance. The organisation identified that waste repurposing could reduce its annual waste by 70,000 tonnes and its greenhouse gas emissions by 49,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. These reductions translate into cost savings of $15 million per year. From an ethical perspective, carbon management is important to corporate social responsibility, or CSR. CSR is the responsibility of an organisation for the impacts of its decisions and activities on society and the environment. Actively mitigating these impacts through carbon management should be a priority in any organisation's CSR policy, if it is to maintain its social licence to operate. By demonstrating a commitment to carbon management and CSR, an organisation can also enhance its brand, public image, and therefore marketability. Carbon offsets are commonly used by organisations for this purpose. The term offsetting means a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in one place to compensate for greenhouse gases emitted elsewhere. Offsets come from a range of projects such as tree planting and wind farms. Importantly, one offset is equal to 1 tonne of carbon dioxide equivalent sequestered or avoided. For example, let's say a farm undertakes a reforestation project that draws down 500 tonnes of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere per year. This would generate 500 carbon offsets each year. The farm then sells these to a paper manufacturer at an agreed price, allowing the paper manufacturer to offset its emissions for that year by 500 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent. The paper manufacturer may choose to go further and become carbon neutral, meaning the company releases net zero emissions into the atmosphere by reducing emissions and buying offsets for those that can't. Internally, a commitment to carbon management can help an organisation attract and retain staff through improved job satisfaction. This is particularly true of the emerging workforce. The 2015 Cone Millennial CSR study found that over 80% of 13 to 24-year-olds consider CSR an important factor when deciding where to work. Externally, customers and investors also increasingly expect companies to disclose their carbon management performance. Walmart, for example, requested greenhouse gas emissions data from 100,000 suppliers in 2009. Another benefit of carbon management is risk management. In terms of regulatory risk, most organisations are likely to face carbon-constraining regulation in the future. Early action can reduce the financial burden of future compliance. Furthermore, the improved resource efficiency achieved through carbon management helps buffer organisations from energy and commodity price volatility. Finally, by engaging in carbon management, organisations are better positioned to leverage direct climate finance opportunities. This funding can be used to support the adoption of low emissions technologies and practices. These drivers demonstrate that there is a case to be made for organisations to voluntarily commit to carbon management. And the benefits also apply to companies that have a mandated obligation to manage their emissions under climate change policy.
Sorry, I was cut off. My internet is not so strong, I see. And so you can all hear me. So you can see there's a two-way market developing. One is the compliance market, where governments and large companies work together to officially reduce their targets, which are set under the Paris Agreement and starting from the Kyoto Protocol onwards, which is all set for the big carbon emissions from the large companies, like I said before. But there's also another market now developing, which is, as you saw in the video, it's already becoming a very, very big market, where companies who are not part of this forced emission reduction increasingly want
Dr. Paul? Yeah.
Next slide, please. So what we are doing, we consider restoring degraded land as the best option. Why? Because the gain in carbon on these lands is highest. As you can see already here from a land that is covered with ferns, Paku Paku, or the baseline when you start doing a project is only 4 or 5 tons of carbon per hectare. So you can increase up to, in our case, up to 200, 300 tons of carbon per hectare by planting trees in a mixed agroforestry system. That's why working on a land restoration is most efficient in sequestering carbon. It also has other advantages. If you do it well and you ensure that people can benefit from the trees you plant, you can also relate to poverty reduction. And if you do it cleverly in mixed agroforestry, it could also help to enhance biodiversity. So you can have 3 different topics that you can include in just one project. Next, please. Next slide. So if you do that and you combine poverty reduction with biodiversity enhancement and climate action, you're also contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. In the same way, this is also becoming more and more important, as you also saw in the video, that it's a license to operate for many companies to not only do something about carbon management, but also do something about improving the world and improving the situation of poor people. So in our project, we contribute to several sustainable development goals, like we're reducing poverty, we help the farmers and the communities in decent work, economic growth, climate action, of course, life on land. We're reducing inequalities because everybody can join our project, poor or not poor. And we also aim for gender equality. So we try to include women and men on an equal level. Next, please. So where are we working? Next slide, please. So if we look at Indonesia as a whole, we have 3 different sites. We have one in West Timor, which we started last year, where we have about 140 hectares. Oh my, just today my internet is very bad. Sorry for that. So the next site is West Sumatra, which is so far our biggest site. So we work around Lake Singkarak, along the lake, along the shoreline, but also in the higher elevation area, which is around the area of Air Dingin. We had a site in Agam, but it's closed already. So we are now focusing on the river basin of Singkarak. Next. Yeah, so in order to set up the project, we start from the farmer's perspective first, which is, we think it's a crucial step. If you don't put farmers in the front seat, your project will always be a problem. Next, please. And I'll show you why. So we are not, of course, alone doing this. We have a huge group of stakeholders that work with us. That's why we also call cooperate. So we cooperate with a lot of local partners here and in Indonesia. So the beneficiaries, of course, are the farming communities who are establishing the food forest area. We have partners. We work with Andalas University already. We work with the forestry department in Solok. We work with a company called Van Aroma for essential oil production. And with local NGO, our main partner is RPL, Rimbo Pangan Lestari, who are implementing the project at the grassroots level. We also have some collaboration with the Dompet Duafa and Solok Radio as our coffee processing unit. Yes, sorry, we are back. So those are the ones that, and the Bupati, so we also make sure we are connected to the local authorities, so we are not doing something which will be against
Dr. Paul, maybe we can try off your camera for the internet. Hello, Dr. Paul. Hello, Dr. Paul, maybe we can try off your camera.
Yes, I'm so sorry for this. I moved to a place close to the Wi-Fi. Hopefully this will end this problem. Yeah, so we have a bank who has given us development capital. We are working with investment funds in Germany, and the Dutch government is also supporting our activities. So we have a big portfolio, so it's not like the usual donor money. It's quite often in providing loans to us, and we can repay by selling carbon credits. Next slide, please. So what is important to put farmer first? The FPIC process, a free, prior and informed consent process, is very crucial to set up the project. So in the beginning, and I know the Minang is very used to negotiations and to get village approval for whatever you want to do in in West Sumatra. So it's very good to have this FPIC process where you discuss everything in detail with the farmers about what we are planning to do, what we want from the farmers. Farmers can give their input, and this goes on. And sometimes there are 5, 6 village meetings before you come to an agreement on the project. And once that is done, you make a contract with them with everything in there, the input from the farmers, our input, and we will start working together from that point. Next, please. Next to, besides making sure that farmers fully understand and agree on your interventions, there is another point that you have to discuss with them. It's why would a farmer plant a tree? Because it can take some time before they can benefit from the trees. So quite often scientists, they say trees are good for biodiversity, for nature, but of course a farmer looks at a tree more like, can I benefit? What benefits can I get from the tree? So we have a lot of different species in our sites. You can see mahogany. Mahogany is very important for, as a saving for the grandchildren, they said. Cloves and cinnamon, those are spices, but they can provide an income. Cinnamon is also considered a saving for big expenses, sometimes for wedding or funeral, education for the children. That's why they want to have cinnamon trees. A petai, jenkol is of course an important food crop, but also a good cash income. And that those kind of discussions you need to do with the farmers to make sure the trees you are promoting are really in line with the preferences and priority of a farmer. Because if you don't do that, a farmer may not be interested in protecting the trees. Next, please. So that was about the farmer benefits. Next, yeah. So what are the benefits besides then what they say they want to get from a tree? So we are also helping them in the carbon project. What do we provide? We help them to set up the nursery. So we pay for the layout of the nursery, we pay for the net and for the setting up of the nursery. With all the materials, we buy the seeds, the seedlings, whatever is needed to get the nursery going, it's covered by us. It's part of the carbon payments to them. We can also help them in negotiating with the BPDAS office, which is the local forestry office for improving river basin management. So planting trees in critical areas. So they have the special office where they have a big nursery. So every year we will get also a lot of trees from the local forestry office. And since it's quite difficult for farmers to negotiate with the forestry office, we have our NGO RPL who does that for the farmers, which is much appreciated. Men and women usually work together in the Minang area. The planting of the seedlings is usually done by the women because they are more precise. So the hard work, tough work is done by the men. Cinnamon seedlings we usually buy from other cinnamon farmers who are in the area and have cinnamon trees already. So they also can benefit from the project, even though they are not part of directly of the project. They benefit from it by selling cinnamon seedlings to us. Yeah, next. So besides helping them with the tree planting, and we where needed, we will train the farmers in management, tree management. Every year we will pay a carbon payment to them. We do that after our team RPL has evaluated and monitored the tree planting. Have they achieved the targets which we have set up in the contract for every year? Is the target achieved? They will get their carbon payment. So it's usually quite like a festive activity where we get an official contribution, like you see in the picture, the total amount given to a farmer group, and then every farmer will, depending on their size of the land, they will get paid a certain amount each year. Next. And next slide. So this carbon payment is quite important because it bridges the gap between the tree planting and the tree getting the fruits. So it's like a bridging fund. So it also helps them to plant the trees because they can get some money in between. So once the trees are 4 or 5 years old, most of the trees will get their harvest. Like the cloves on the right, it's about 4 or 5 years. It's durian trees are of course chosen by farmers, but take a bit longer. The lemon trees can already produce fruits after 2 years, like the pinang. So even after 2 years, 3 years already, the first trees are producing tree products, which are completely for the farmers. They can sell it. We don't request any funds or money for that. It's their income. Next, please. So how do we set up the project, the approach that we use in the field? And next. So the benefits are quite clear. So they can get carbon payments, they get nursery costs and help them with the seedlings. They get the benefits from the tree products, but they get another benefit, which is an approach that a technology we developed with FAO some years ago, where they asked us to test the concept of assisted natural regeneration, where we let nature work. So instead of farmers doing a lot of hard work on the Imperata grassland or the fern areas, you can also imitate natural succession phases of a forest. So that means that nature can do a lot of work for you. And this is called assisted natural regeneration. It is very cost effective. It's labor effective. It's not very labor intensive. And the next slide will show you how we do it. Next, please. So the only thing farmers need is a wooden plank and a rope. So you can imagine that even the poorest farmers can get access to a wooden plank and a rope. So everybody without any income can join in this rehabilitation work. So the only thing farmers have to do is to press the grass and to press the weeds. And in the meantime, look in between the grasses for trees that are already there, which are seeds dispersed by birds or by the babi hutan, the wild boar. So trees are competing with the grass to grow. So what we do after looking at the trees, you press the grass around the trees. So you give the tree light to grow. Next, please. So pressing is quite easy, and this picture on the right you see, after pressing already, you can see quite a lot of trees that they have protected, so they can start to now really grow. And what we found out is these trees grow very fast because while they were competing with the grasses, they have established a very good root system. They have become quite strong in competing. So once you give them light and space to grow, farmers already saw that those trees grow very fast. So you have a very good start for your carbon sequestration, and you get free trees for free, which were already there, and they sequester quite a lot of carbon. Another advantage is that if you press the grass, if you see on the left, it provides a very thick blanket for the soil protection. So we found out that it is really avoiding evapotranspiration. So water, the sun doesn't penetrate to the soil anymore. So it remains very moist, the soil, below, which also benefits tree growth. The only disadvantage to working in fern areas is that ferns cannot be pressed because they come back after you press. In those cases, farmers slash the vegetation using a cutter or the knife, and then but they leave the ferns on the soil just to provide a similar blanket as with imperator grasses. Next, please. So if you look at this picture, then after pressing the imperator grass, it starts to decay. Because you fool the grass a bit, it doesn't die off directly, but it's also getting very weak. And with the moisture thread in below, the imperator starts to decay and starts to rot, which is adding humus and a lot of carbon to the soil, as you can see here on the right. It becomes a very good natural fertilizer for trees to grow, and it's very moist. And a lot of nutrients come from the decaying grasses. Next, please. So that is the attention. So can we back this up with scientific data? So we looked at this pictures in the first 4 years after pressing. So of course the above ground biomass is not so big yet, which is the tree growth. So you can see this picture above. Only after 4 or 5 years, trees will really take off in their growth. So if you do this carbon assessment again, you will get a much higher above ground biomass now. But important is to look at the data for the soil. You can see that after 2 years, blue is the baseline. So that's the imperator grassland, which is holding the carbon in itself, so in the soil. You can see that's quite a significant increase after just 2 years of carbon in the soil. And this analysis we have done with Andalas soil science department. So we analyzed the soil samples, and you could see that in the beginning, the increase in carbon in the soil is quite significant. And this is very important because carbon in the soil holds the water, can hold water very effectively. So it also helps to retain the water in degraded hillsides. Next, please. So you bring back a kind of a natural process. Through natural processes, you can bring back a forested area. So if you can see on the left above, this is where we started, a bare hill covered with imperator. After pressing the land, the grass, you can see in year 1 already, the trees that were in between start to grow. So you already have some trees for free growing and sequestering carbon. After 3 years, those trees, you can see, are already quite big. They grow very fast. This is a time where farmers start to plant economic valuable trees. Like here you can see the small shrub types of trees. These are cloves that they plant in between, but there will also be fruit trees like mango, jeruk, durian. Whatever farmers want to plant, they can choose their own trees in between. And the advantage of this natural trees is also they provide some shade and a kind of a positive microclimate for the planted trees to grow. And after 7 years, here on the right, you can see the hill is already covered in a forest-like landscape with all kinds of trees, indigenous natural trees. You have cloves, you have fruit trees, and it grows into a thick forest-like landscape. Next, please. And that's only by using a wooden plank and planting some trees. So then we looked also at what about biodiversity enhancement? Can we say something about that? So we put up just a few camera traps, and it was already quite impressive what we saw on those cameras. And when we looked at all the pictures and the small videos of the animals, we could even fill up the entire food chain of the biology of the animals, from the producers, which are our trees, the plants. It is attracting monkeys, kijang, deer, small animals, pigs, which are called the primary consumers. So they all appeared in front of our camera. You also have secondary consumers, carnivores. We got Asian leopard in our site on the camera. We got big monkeys. We got an owl. The owl is quite often on the camera. And the owl, if you have an owl in your site, it means you also have small animals there, like mice and snakes. So owl is a kind of an indicator species. So if the owl exists in your area, then you will have also small animals. But we will set up more detailed research with Andalas soon to also look at all those small animals that we haven't caught on the camera. And the upper part we can see on the left, we regularly found footsteps of the Sumatran tiger in our site. And some of the farmers have seen the tiger on some occasions in our food forest area. So even the tiger can roam around and find some kijang or other food for it to eat. Yeah, next please. So not only the farmers are happy in our site, you can see animals also like it. Even the monkeys, they enjoy making selfies from our camera traps. Next, please. Yeah, so with that, we have now almost in total, together with the site in Timor, we are reaching about 400 hectares of land that we have restored over the past years. So now that the trees are really producing fruits, we are entering a new phase for our project. Next slide, please. So during discussions in the field, when I could still come to Indonesia, but I hope next year I can travel again with COVID getting better. Or they asked me to, why, Papal, why can't you sell our products in Europe and help us to access the European market? So it started a bit as a joke, but we are now really getting into a serious opportunity to do this. We've already established an essential oil unit in one of our villages where farmers are producing essential oil from the leaves of the clove trees. We are training farmers in coffee management, coffee tree management, and collecting the right berries, because farmers were never trained in what coffee berries they have to collect to sell. So the prices were very low that they got from the traders, because they were mixing up green berries with red berries. So we are helping now them to provide a better quality coffee bean. So the price will increase. The good thing is, just this week we got confirmation that we get funding for setting up a drying unit for the coffee. So this will add value to the farmers' coffee harvesting and a better price, so they can dry the coffee beans themselves. We will get an improved distilling unit, a larger one, and a stainless steel one, which will help the farmers to give the quality, which is the national Indonesian standard quality. And in West Java, we are improving the palm sugar production. Also, we have given them the HACCP certification for food safety, and they're getting organic certified as well. And we are improving the production site with concrete floors and improved cooking stoves. Next, please. So that's really now, for us, the circle is now round. So we are starting from degraded land, helping the communities to establish a productive food forest where they can get their income from. So they income from, and now in the end also improve the income by helping them with post-harvesting opportunities. So that means that for sustainable development goal, no poverty, we can decrease poverty in the village by using carbon payments. So that's really good. Next slide. And in the meantime, of course, the trees are sequestering CO2, so we're also supporting the climate carbon reduction strategies, and we're improving biodiversity. So those three are all integrated into our project, all paid by carbon payments. So we've been doing this for 10 years, but recently more and more research comes up about how to set up successful tree products, and we're quite happy to see that what they come up with, this list, this is what we have been doing already for 10 years. So we are a bit running ahead of the scientific world. So that makes me quite happy. So put local people at the heart of tree planting project, which is a key issue, as you may see from our experience, to make it into a success. If you come with predefined solutions and it doesn't fit the world of the local farmer, your tree project will never be a success. And you have to negotiate, and you have to make adjustments to your thinking. Otherwise, yeah, it will never be a success. They say maximize biodiversity recovery and select the right species that maximize biodiversity. Now, these two are, I put them in red because those are, yeah, for a successful project are a bit dangerous, because a farmer doesn't see the benefit directly of biodiversity. So if you come in with trees that maximize biodiversity, it may not fit a farmer priority or need. So you have to come up with tree species that maximize economic benefits for the farmer. Then you will have in my opinion, have a successful project. So I think this 0.6 scientific world still needs to look at more carefully. And for the rest, yeah, it's fine, and learn by doing. Yes, that's what we do. We learn together with the farmers, because farmers can come up with very, very ingenious solutions to problems we couldn't find a solution for. So make sure you make use with, combine your scientific knowledge with local knowledge, but make sure the local knowledge comes first, because then farmers are easy to adopt tree planting. All right, next. And this is now, as I said before, tree planting has to change to tree growing. See, there's in the world are so many large-scale tree planting initiatives, which is all nice and good, but just planting a tree doesn't make it successful. And now more and more, research is showing, and articles are coming out that all these tree planting projects with millions of trees planting are failing. And even there was a last year, I think, in the Jakarta Post and Indonesian newspapers also, that your President Jokowi also asked, where are the trees of our 1 trillion tree planting scheme? And there was an evaluation done that only 5% of those trees after 1 year were still alive. So what we do is indeed to follow the tree planting for 5 years. So we are really growing the trees. And our team RPL is really good and perfect in doing that. They monitor almost daily with the farmers and look at how the trees are doing. If a tree is not surviving, they will replant the trees, and until it is all done after 5 years and the forest is growing and the tree can grow by itself. That's very important to make it into a success. Next. So that's all I have to say. This is our team of champions in the field, RPL. Maybe you know some of them. I think they're also part of this seminar, some of them. And thank you all for attending, and sorry for the bad internet connection I had, and hope it was useful.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Paul, for giving us such very informative and interesting presentation. Okay, so now we come to the question and answer session, and I'd like to have 3 questions from the participants. So I see from the chat that we already have 3 questions. So the committee, Fahri, can you show the 3 first questions?
All right, just a minute, miss.
Okay, Dr. Paul, so we have 3 questions. The first is from Papua, so very far.
Okay.
From Muhammad Hafiz. They asked about the carbon trading certificate, which are generated $28 per ton of CO2. And the question is there any balance between money and efforts to reduce emissions? And however, many developed countries continue to add factories or industries, which results in increasing emissions. Okay, would you like to answer one by one, or I read it all first?
I can answer the one by one, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's a very good question. Indeed, the $28, that's the certificate for the certified emission rights. So the CER certificates, which are part of the national determined contribution of each country. The price is indeed increasing to force those companies to speed up their emission reduction strategy, so move away from fossil fuels into renewable energy. So that's why the price will further increase, because then it becomes more expensive for companies to just buy offsets and continue, as you rightly said, adding factories and increase emissions just like that. So hopefully that will indeed be an issue that is going to be tackled by increased prices. And also in the international climate talks, the ceiling where the big polluters can emit their emissions is going down. So it is becoming harder for them to just continue with increasing emissions and just offsetting. So we hope in the future this will indeed, as you said, more be in balance, and they will put money into reducing their emissions by moving away from fossil fuel use and implement technologies on renewable energy. Yeah, that's the first one, I think.
Okay, the second question from Andi Unpad. I think Unpad is University Pakuan, yeah, from Bogor. What policy Indonesia should do to protect its forests and peatlands and obtain optimal benefit from carbon trading? Has the implementation of the current moratorium policy implemented by the Indonesian government significantly reduced carbon emissions in Indonesia? Okay, yeah. That's the second question. Okay,
that's another very important and interesting question. Yeah, what I see is that Indonesia is doing, yeah, relatively well in forest protection these days. It is, if you look at some of the literature, and I think Indonesia is has now one of the lowest deforestation rates. So yes, the moratorium is really, I think it's really working. Of course, there's always something negative to say about it, but in general, I think Indonesia is doing a very good job in moving forward with forest protection and forest regeneration. There is, however, one issue now. There is a new policy coming on the carbon trading in Indonesia. So they are setting up a policy where they are forcing all the carbon projects to deliver 30% of the carbon sequestration to the Indonesian government. Now, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. It is in many cases, especially for projects like in our case, or like those who work with social forestry and really work with communities. So the money that they get is really needed to improve livelihoods of communities. And if the government now forces those projects to hand over 30% of the carbon credits to the government for free, many of these very good projects could be in trouble. And I know many NGOs and Indonesian NGOs are protesting against this regulation. So the last thing I heard is that maybe these projects where you combine poverty reduction with carbon emission reduction and biodiversity improvement will be left out of this new regulation, but it will certainly come into effect for the big, large-scale monoculture forest plantations, which are quite often in Kalimantan or the pulp, paper and pulp projects in Riau. So they will certainly be included into these new policies of the government. So I think the moratorium, yes, I think in the long run is really effective, as we can see from many of the researches being done. But now this new policy could maybe reduce some of the effectiveness, but let's hope in the end this policy will come out as a good one. And things are looking quite positive, I think, and NGOs keep pushing the government to make a distinction between these different projects.
Okay.
Yeah, so that if that is done, then indeed carbon trading can be very optimal, especially if you have those social forestry, community-based projects who can just do direct carbon trading without giving away a lot, 1/3 of their income to the government for their own commitments. Yeah, I think that is
Okay.
my answer.
Okay, so we go on to the third questions. This is from Unand. This is from environmental engineering. The news and research has found that even with the carbon offset program, there seems to be a steady increase of carbon emission in the atmosphere. Is the problem because of the carbon emitting companies lying about the emissions, or is it because of the progress to decrease the carbon losses to the growth of factories?
Yes. All right. Not a very good one. Very good question. Don't worry. It's a good one to ask critical questions. Yeah, that's true. We are indeed, even in the Netherlands, we are always talking a lot. As you know, Dutch, they like to criticize a lot, but they don't do something themselves. So I must say the Netherlands is really very low in Europe in reducing carbon emissions. And that also because our government is a bit of an economic government. So they're only looking at economy. Indeed, as you say, there is an increase in CO2 still. So the business as usual scenario is still going on. And that's indeed a problem. And there's more and more criticism coming that we have to do something about this. And I must say, Germany, England, France are really ahead of this. Italy also. They are really moving into, doing something about this. But I'm very sorry to say that the Netherlands again is very bad in doing something about this. And we can see that our targets until now have not been achieved. Every year we don't achieve our targets to reduce our carbon emissions. I must say that in the voluntary market where we are working, that all these companies who are not forced to contribute to the targets of the national government, it's a very fast growing market. So yeah, those companies are really doing something about reducing their emissions. They will have solar panels, they have electric cars, they're looking at reducing their gas use in the companies. So, but they are not part of the official calculations in national carbon emission, which is a pity. So there's a lot of debate going on. Could they also be part of it? So then we get a more complete picture of what is really going on. But it is true, it is still increasing. And even if we stop using fossil fuels now, we still have, I think, 5 or 6 years where there will be an increase in carbon emission from all kinds of other emissions. But yeah, we have to start somewhere. And with these very strict targets set now by the EU to become carbon neutral in 2050, there's more and more pressure being put on the nations to really improve the situation. So I remain hopeful that we can still reverse the trend. But yes, true, it is still increasing. They're not even lying about their emissions. They just continue doing what they were doing. So maybe even worse. They're not yet being pushed by the government, but it is changing. It is now changing. So more and more companies are being held responsible for their emissions. And laws are coming out. And even now we have one organization in the Netherlands has sued the Dutch government. They took the Dutch government to court because of not achieving their annual targets, and they won the lawsuit. So Dutch government now really has to do something. So hopefully this will improve and could be an example for other countries where they could sue the government. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be my answer.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Paul, for this for answering these 3 questions. Okay, for these 3 questions, is there anything you want to confirm from the one who asked? Muhammad Hafiz, Andi, and Sultan Ikhtiar. Is there anything you want to confirm with the answer and explanation from Dr. Paul? Okay, so please on your microphone if you want to say something. Okay, I think everything is okay, Dr. Paul. So we still have one more question. I think we see in the chat we still have one more question. And the question is, wait. Okay, a moment. Fahri, can you show the question 4 and 5?
Baik Bu, sebentar Bu.
So let's see the first two questions first, Fahri. 4 and 5, question 4 and 5.
Ya baik Bu, lagi mau di-subscribe Bu.
Okay, so Dr. Paul, this is question number 4 and 5. Question number 4 from Universitas Andalas from Muhni Alvin Rusdi. The question is, how is the implementation of carbon credit policy to micro-scale industry? Are these micro-scale industry affected to this policy? Affected by this policy?
Okay, that was, maybe I explained a little bit, maybe not clear, that the carbon credit policy by the government is not, the micro-scale industry is not part of this policy. So this carbon credit policy at national level is only geared at the big emitters. So these are the petrochemical industry, like your Pertamina and all the fuel companies. They are part of this policy. Gas, the electricity companies, I think PLN is part of your official carbon credit policy. So all those big ones are part of it. Microscale is out of this policy, so they don't have to do it. But as you could see from the second video, there are a number of very good reasons why the microscale industry is doing something about this, about their carbon emissions. So it is indeed for their license to operate. More and more clients, at least in Europe, are looking at products, how they score on carbon emissions. So even the small food processing company customers in the EU, they don't buy the products which are still emitting a lot of carbon. So on packages, you see more and more that we are reducing carbon emissions, we are doing this and this, we're planting trees, and those are products that are preferred by customers in Europe more and more, and they also can get a better price. So there is a lot of there is, as the lady said, there's a good business case for micro-scale industry to voluntarily do something about it, and we can see there's an enormous increase in companies also contacting us about, can we join your project, because we also want to do our part. So normally the micro-scale industry, it really comes from within intrinsic motivation from the director or the owners of the company. So they're not forced, but it's really a voluntary movement for micro-scale industries to do something about it. So I think that's even more sustainable than being forced by the government to do something about it. Yeah.
Okay, so we go to the next questions. Question 5 from Professor Vera. The main problem in Indonesia is a forest fire. This is due to the burning of agricultural residues after harvesting that increase CO2, especially in Sumatra and Kalimantan. So can you programs reduce the carbon dioxide produced by these forest fires? And what is the best solution for these problems?
Oh, thanks. That's another interesting one, but also a difficult one to answer. That's a big question. And what we have seen, at least on our small scale in our villages, is, and that's what the farmers explained to me some years ago, the hills that we have reforested. There used to be the alang-alang, the imperator grassland, and they said there were every year there were fires on the hills, and they said after your project came and we started restoring the land, the fire stopped. So up until now, no fires have exist anymore on these areas. So if we take that small example into a very big example, maybe this could be something also for preventing forest fires at a large scale, where if you have these projects around villages, so farmers become very careful with what they burn and where they burn their agricultural residues, and it could prevent some forest fires, forests and fires getting out of hand, because they know, oh, there's a lot of activities going on and we don't want to spoil that. So they become more careful. Well, that's at least what farmers said in our villages, that people have become very careful in where they are burning and what they are burning, and some have stopped burning their agricultural residues because they're afraid that it may affect the program. So yeah, there is probably some component can be done, but that should be at a very large scale to prevent the big forest fires we often see in Sumatra and Kalimantan. But they have, I think, also a different origin, where this maybe for oil palm plantations, and then it may go out of hand, and then by pressing the grass, it is also a zero burning technology. I think that could be, it would be great if that technology can be used all over Indonesia instead of burning the land, because usually they burn the land to clear the land. But if you stop that and you could do pressing, then the weeds die off by itself, so you don't need burning anymore. So that could be something to prevent forest fires in the future. And what we found also, and that's also research done by pressing the grass, because it's so moist below, that if there is a fire, it doesn't spread anymore, because it's very moist, and the fire is really can be controlled easily. So I think pressing instead of burning weeds could be a solution. Yeah, in my opinion.
Okay. Dr. Paul, I think we have still have question number 6. Fahri, can you show question number 6 from Dr. Fajar from Universitas Andalas?
Okay, a minute, Miss.
Okay, while waiting, Dr. Paul, can I ask you a question also?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so far, if I'm not mistaken, from your presentation, so Indonesia have to reduce 25% of CO2, correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think, it's about, if I remember, 25, 28. That's the target they have set for themselves. Yeah.
And so I would like to know, to your knowledge, so how is the progress towards that natural carbon in 2050. So we are Indonesia ahead schedule or behind schedule for that to achieve in 2050.
Yeah. Yeah, I know for Indonesia, of course, the reduction, they have set the target mainly coming from preventing deforestation and reforestation. So they've set up the forest sector as a major contributor to reduce the carbon emission. And I'm not sure how far they are now, but the fact that they are now looking at getting carbon credits from projects. So the NGOs we know, and they are lobbying for these policies to improve it. They are saying they're doing that because Indonesia is behind schedule. So now they are looking for where can we get more carbon credits to achieve
So we have
our...
to catch up for the next 30 years.
Yeah, but I think that because of the deforestation rates are going down, I think if that can continue and you can have peatland management improved, then you will significantly reduce your emissions. But you're not the only country. I think every country in the world is behind schedule. So it's nothing specifically for you as Indonesia. But I think you have a very good opportunity with if you can conserve peatland areas and continue with your reduction in your deforestation rate, I think you can really become an example for the world. Yeah.
Okay, so we still have one more question. Question number 6 from Dr. Fajar from Unand. If I'm not mistaken, there's also a site that is discontinued from the project in Agam. So could you please share to us about this? Can it be considered as a failed project as compared to the success one near Singkarak? What have you learned from the failed project?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Fajar. Good one. Can tell you it's not a failed project. We started there. Yeah, just as one of the sites, because it was a bit of, it was proposed to us by the Provincial Forestry Office. And we worked there for 5 years, and officially after 5 years, we no longer provide incentives to the community because the farmers can live from the harvest of the trees. So the trees have grown. So then we know the system has grown up. The farmers can harvest the cloves, the fruits, whatever. So officially then we can stop working there because the project is finished and the trees are growing. So that's why we stopped in Agam, and it was also because we are looking at getting more impact in one big area. So Agam was a bit outside from where we are working now. And then considering that the farmers were harvesting the trees and were living from the trees, we said, okay, the people are okay there, so we can move to the other area. That's more the reason why we stopped working in Agam. Not because it was failed, but the trees have grown and are fully grown. Even the first contracts we have in our current site, all the trees that are 9-10 years old are officially no longer part of our program because the trees are grown. So that's where we say, and this was something that farmers themselves came up with. They said, just help us for 5 years, and once we can get harvest from the trees, we don't need your help anymore. That's what they said. So we took that as a nice deadline for us to work 5 years to restore an area and then move to a next area. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have learned indeed that 5 years is really a needed time frame to make it into a success. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Paul. I think we check in the chat. We don't have any more questions. So all participants, we finally come to the end of this webinar. So I will read a short conclusion from this webinar. So based on Paris Climate Agreement, each country has to contribute to the carbon reduction. And based on the Kyoto Protocol, so countries have to implement the clean development mechanism in order to reduce the CO2. And there are the scheme of carbon markets and carbon credits. So for Indonesia, one of the implementation of carbon reduction is a land restoration, which shows that a good benefit from both parties, the farmers and also the countries who wants to take the offsite credit from the activities. Okay, I think that's the conclusion from our webinar today. I would like to thank the speaker for the very interesting information, and we hope we all get a very good perspective and broaden our knowledge about what is the carbon trade and how the land restoration takes part in reducing CO2 in Indonesia. Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Paul. So we hope we can meet in another webinars in a very near future. Okay, thank you very much. I return to the MC. Waalaikumsalam. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.